Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Free Outside podcast. This is a great episode, but first I want to start off with something I heard on another podcast because market research. But I'm a pretty big sports fan, especially playoff sports, and it's the NBA playoffs right now, and I was listening to this podcast about it, and Doc Rivers, a famed coach, was on, and he was talking about Jerry West, who just passed away. Jerry West is known as the logo because the NBA, the entire league, the logo of the NBA is literally the silhouette of Jerry West. But Jerry West passed away, and as Doc Rivers put it, Jerry filled out his dash. So that little line from 1938 to 2024, that little dash in between that'll be on his tombstone, he filled it out. Made the most of it. He put everything into that dash, and I just thought that was a pretty cool way to think about how you live life. You have that year, day you're born, and then you have that year, day, everything that you are no longer there. But everything happens during that subtle little dash. So that just kind of stuck with me, and I wanted to share that. So carry on and fill out that dash, because that's all you got to fill out. Can't control too much else. Fill out that dash. All right, we're going to switch gears for the episode, but just wanted to share a little tidbit because we can do whatever we want on here. I run the show. Today, I'm talking to Liz Derstine. She has set FKTs on the Long Trail, Pinhoti Trail, the Appalachian Trail, Wildwood Trail, a bunch of different trails, both self-supported and supported. And she really jumped into FKTs without having done much backpacking, and she's done a number of ultra marathons as well, and just sort of crosses and blurs that line of getting out there, doing hard things, helping others do hard things. So wanted to get her on the podcast. We talked a few months ago when I was too scared to start a podcast, so bear with the timeline, but it's a good interview. And if you stick around until the end, I have an important bit of news to share about the FKT world. So that's it. Let's get into the episode. Here is Liz, aka Mercury. Yeah, it's just going to be a cold opening, and then we'll just get started. So thanks for joining, Liz. First off, I'm curious, how did you get your trail name?
Oh, that's a great question. First, thanks for having me. Do you have sorry, I will answer your question, but I have a question. Do you know the name of your podcast yet?
Yeah, it's probably going to be Free Outside.
Sweet.
Just keep it all simple and easy, you know.
Yeah, no, that's good. Gotta keep on brand. Okay. Yeah. Trail name Mercury. So yeah, I know many people are given trail names. I chose my trail name. I was getting ready. I was prepping for hiking the Appalachian Trail, and I was getting ready for a practice hike that my support person, Warren, was helping me on. And I knew he'd be driving this van, and I was like, oh, I wonder if the van has a CD player. I should get some music. So I went to the local record store, which had some CDs, and I was perusing the classical section and found Pulse Planets, which is a great symphonic suite. And I had a CD player in my car at the time, so I bought the CD, popped it in, and it had been a while since I'd heard it. And yeah, I flipped it to Mercury, and it's just a very light, springy, happy sounding song. And I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like this music sort of personifies how I feel when I'm on the trail. So Mercury just seemed, I was like, oh, I think that should be my trail name.
That's awesome. So the AT, was that your FKT, your record on that? Was that your first through hike or long distance trail ever?
Yes. And yes.
Oh my gosh. And so And Warren Doyle was your support, right?
Yes.
How did you get linked up with him? Because he's a legend of like the last 50 years in the AT circles. So I'm curious
Right.
how go from no through hike to linked up with probably the person who's done it maybe arguably the most times. How did you even manage
Yes.
that?
Well, so whenever I get into something, I like to, just do a big deep dive, learn everything I can, do all the, I don't know, background reading, everything. So like I had it in my mind for a long time that I wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. So I just devoured like everything I could read about it. And I knew about Jennifer Fire Davis and her records that she has set on the trail. So yeah, she set the women's record on her second through hike of the AT. I don't know if as many people know about that. And then she went on to set the or break the overall record in her third AT through hike. But she has written books about her through hikes, her first one, which wasn't for an FKT. And as she was preparing for that, I don't know how she heard about it, but she attended this workshop that Warren Doyle puts on, basically like mentally helping hikers to mentally prepare for hiking the AT, because the statistics are something like only, I forget what it is, but maybe 20% of
Mhm.
people that start the trail complete it. And, I think his whole thing is like, well, why? And diving into that. And so his whole thing is wanting to kind of like, the workshop isn't necessarily like how to hike the AT from a completely logistical standpoint, but how to mentally prepare for it. So she attended the workshop and then wrote about it in her book. And then I also read Scott Jurick's book, North,
Mhm.
where Warren Doyle makes an appearance in that book, and how Jennifer Far Davis describes Warren Doyle and how Scott Jurek described Warren Doyle. Like there was maybe some crossover, but I was just like, I feel like I, like in Jen's book, it's like he's a protagonist, and Scott's book, antagonist. So
Yep.
I just felt like that I am so curious about meeting this person and hearing what he has to say. So I just went to his website and found that he had a workshop coming up, and this was the summer of 2019. So I signed up and booked a flight out to Tennessee and attended his workshop. And we got like, I'm like, how much of the story should I dive into? But that's how we met, and then we stayed in touch, and he helped me prepare for it and eventually proved me on
So,
the
so
AT.
you go out to this workshop, and is it mostly through hikers and with plenty of backpacking gear and stuff? And you obviously have a bit of a different intention in mind. Was it a lot of crossover in the things you're trying to pick up out there, just getting experience to even cover the trail? Maybe it's twice as fast as some of the other people at the workshop, or what goes on out there?
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say even though I was, hoping to maybe hike more miles per day than the other people attending the workshop. I mean, yeah, like I don't, yeah, no one in the workshop had completed a through hike before. Like we were all on the same boat, and I was all excited about testing out my gear, as were the people attending the workshops. We were kind of like showing each other our hyperlight packs and like setting up our tents just to see like how to set them up, and just swapping tips and stuff like that. And we would go, we would be at this uh, home base, Warren's property. The Appalachian Folk School.
Yep.
And from that's where we stayed and would have class during the day. But then 3 days we did what he called these diagnostic hikes, where basically he'd drop us off at one part of the trail. And depending on how far we wanted to go, like he might stagger the drop-offs, but then we all end at the same place.
Mhm.
So the first day, everyone did a 6 mile section. This is in Virginia. And I ended up, I did 6 miles out, but then turned around, they came back and they just picked me up afterward. And then one of the other days, I think some people did 5 miles or 7 miles, but then Warren would just drive me a little farther up the road and, you know, at another trail crossing, and I'd run back down the same way. So
Yeah, he's such a mythical creature of just the Appalachian Trail in general. And just the trail world. I met him on Thanksgiving in maybe 2021, just in Arkansas at a McDonald's, and we were hiking
that's
the
right.
Washita Trail, and just he gave us a ride back to the trail, and it was so funny, just so random. We're just having Thanksgiving sitting on the curb at a McDonald's, and of all people, Warren Doyle just rolls up with his car full of stuff. And he told me when people get maps or stuff, he likes to buy those briefcases that are in like movies and stuff that are all silver. And when he gives info and stuff, he likes to put it in there as if it's like $1 million secret or something like that. So he's a fun character.
Yeah.
And
What a
then
random way to meet.
yeah, absolutely. Never met him before. And so was he the only support for the entire thing? And then I heard the method was you guys like bought a van or something, and that was the sleep system, or I'm curious about this
Yeah.
part.
Yeah. So he was my main support from start to finish. I had other people come out, like my parents and like my sister lived in Virginia, so she came out and saw me in Virginia. My parents live in Pennsylvania, so they came out and saw me in Pennsylvania. And my sister came up in Pennsylvania too. It was in the summer of 2020, so it was just kind of a weird time to be hiking. I lived out in Oregon at the time. I drove cross country to get out there. So, pre-pandemic, I was like, hey, yeah, come out to the trail. It'll be so great. But then it was like, well, okay. I still decided to hike, but it was just not as I originally envisioned it, with just like, yeah, everyone come out, let's do this together. It was a little more solitary. And and David Horton, another like trail legend, he came out and helped for the first 2.5 days. Then when I got up to Virginia, close to his hometown, he came out then too. And then, even though a lot of my West Coast friends, or like none of my West Coast friends, could come out to see me, it was pretty cool because, as I made my way north, people caught on to what I was doing. Like Warren was sending out these little email updates via my blog every day. So like people got it, like in Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee. I mean, it was mostly just me, and there weren't very many thru hikers out there. So it was just a weird time. But then once I got up to Virginia, and I was doing pretty well through Virginia, so that I think it was just, yeah, like word got out, and then people started to come out, and then I was hardly ever alone from maybe Virginia all the way up through the beginning of Maine, which was really cool.
Do you feel like that there was this pressure to almost prove that you had a chance before people latched on in Virginia and stuff too? Because I think when I started in the FKT world, it was like almost have to prove a little bit for people to take you serious, and then it sounds like a little easier to get support and people along the way from there too.
Yeah. So like someone actually told me that in Virginia. They were like, yeah, I mean, because people, I guess I don't know how many record attempts happen every year, but I think maybe they were aware, or maybe like heard, that I'm attempting a record, but no, like no one, I don't have any street cred. Like no one knows who I am, but then I did, like, I had a hot streak through Virginia. So I do think people really were like, before that, maybe they were just like, oh, let's like see what this is all about. But then I did feel, at least like through that point, like, yeah, like I can do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So did you have to figure out all the new things that I was lucky enough to deal with on a casual through hike and learn, like foot issues? And did you have like animal encounters and sleep deprivation? What are kind of the main hurdles or unexpected scary things out there?
Oh, that's such a great question. Cause yeah, no, there were so many things I didn't know, and you just don't know until you've experienced it. I, when I met David Horton, like leading up to, like, it was during one of my practice hikes, the first thing, and I didn't know him at the time, but we were like, we met in a parking lot, like at the university he teaches at. He rolled up on his bike and he just pointed at me and was like, "You don't know." And now, now that I've kind of been through it, I'm like, yeah, I didn't know. He was right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that there were some pretty steep learning curves. The shoes that I had worn in all my training, even in, multiple 40-mile plus days, they did not work for attempting 50-mile plus days on the AT, because I was training on the West Coast. I don't have all the rocks and roots and stuff out there like the AT does. So my shoes and then therefore my feet got really torn up, really horrible blisters. Every day started with just kind of tiptoeing and whimpering and just waiting for the blisters to quote unquote warm up. And that was really painful. But then after about an hour or so, they would, I don't know if it's just endorphins or what, but my body or feet or whatever just sort of accepted the blisters were there and they wouldn't bother me as much throughout the rest of the day. I had animal encounters. I startled a couple bears along the way. One was not a big deal. The other one was a big deal. I scared these, I was by myself. It was around dusk. I heard this like kind of big crash in the bushes, then saw these little cubs scurrying up to different trees next to each other. And I was like, oh no, this isn't good. And then Mama Bear just comes crashing out of the bushes onto the trail and starts coming toward me, like, huffing and so I backed up and gave her space. She came at me, then I backed up some more. She got up on her hind legs to scare me a little more, and then went back to the cubs. And in the moment I was very calm about it, but then after the encounter, and I ended up making like a wide semicircle bushwhack around where the bears were, I looked down and my hands were just like shaking uncontrollably. So like, even though I felt like I handled it well, that was probably one of the most scared times I've ever been.
And then do you just start running, covering miles to put space between you and the bears? Or are you just like alert at that point?
Yeah, I was just on high alert, and it was so silly because even after I made the effort to go really wide around the bear, I could still kind of see it, and every so often the bear would get up on her hind legs just to like keep an eye on me and see where I was. So we were kind of tracking each other. But then unfortunately, the trail just started to kind of go around a curve and wind around and start to go toward the bear again. I was like, no, but she just, and the cubs just kind of ambled away and it all worked out.
Yeah. And meanwhile, you're trying to just hold it together with your feet and your mileage for a record at the same time of realizing there's monsters in the woods.
Yeah, that's right.
And so once deep into it and stuff, did you start having to pull all-nighters and experience some of the sleep deprivation stuff of FKTs and things up north as well?
Yes. Yeah. That was just another, before the hike, and as I'm planning it all out and calculating what I need to do to set an FKT, Warren and I came up just like with these three numbers. I'm like, okay, let's see if I can remember my math. I think it was 17, 1, 6, like 17 hours of hiking, an hour total of, maybe like half an hour before starting, half an hour before going to bed, and like 6 hours of sleep. So like, yeah, that sounds really ideal. And in the practice hikes I did, which we kept the mileage a little lower, which like in the low 40s rather than like the low 50s. We were like, yeah, I can maintain that pace. That's fine. So yeah, 17:16 or whatever it was. And
Yeah.
so it just logically, it was like, yeah, I can do that. But you know, things happen. I got shin splints very, like, probably in the second day. I put in this
Oh,
really big, near 70-mile first day. And there are so many ups and downs. And of course, my body's not used to that. And so I got shin splints. I could still walk fine, but I definitely couldn't run without making everything worse. So my pace was slower than I was hoping to maintain maybe like a 3.5 mile pace, which for me, I have to run intermittently to maintain that. But I couldn't run. I walked. So I had to walk longer hours to meet my goals and therefore get a lot less sleep. So I have a little chart on my website, mercuryontheRun.com. I think the link might be broken. I'll have to fix it before the podcast, but I have a PDF that Warren made just so you can see the hours per day I hiked. So how many hours per day, how many miles per day, what my pace was. And it's just some of them I'm just like, I don't know how I did that. Maybe an average day was 18, but I had plenty of 20-hour days, 21-hour days. And I think my longest day was 22 hours, but it's like you do the math and that's maybe like a couple hours of sleep per night on top of having to take care of my feet and eat and all the other things you have to take care of besides sleep.
Yeah, it's amazing how the hours add up too. It's not like you're bored out there or just, casually going along. You're always thinking ahead about something, and math is continually happening, and you're assessing the last stop, thinking of how you could have been better and things like that out there. Did you end up like hallucinating and stuff too during some of those pushes?
Yeah, it's funny because I never thought I hallucinated, because when people talk about hallucinating in ultras or in FKTs like this, I imagine that they are, like they're seeing a clown in front of them, or just like that. I think I imagine it to be really psychedelic, which maybe for some people it is, but who was I talking to? Alyssa, Alyssa
Godesky?
Not Godeski. She has the Pinhoti Trail record.
Oh, Clark, maybe?
Alyssa Clark. Yeah, we were talking about it. She was describing it. I was like, wait, what? Yeah, what you're describing? Yeah, that's happened to me too. And so for me, which I guess this might fall into the definition of hallucinations, but I noticed. So when I'd be walking along, I spent a lot of hours hiking at night. I'd be looking down a lot just to not trip, and I'd still trip anyway. But the leaves on the ground I'd start to see faces, and usually they would be. It was really creepy. Like they'd be mocking me, or like frowning or smiling. It was just I think I'd start to create faces, just like with the patterns that I'd see out there. And then definitely like big boulders that you see out on the trail, I would think that they're tents or cars or things. So I think, my mind, it was like my mind was trying to make sense of everyday things you see out there, but turn them into maybe the things I wanted to see. Like maybe I did want human connection. Maybe I wanted to see a car because that meant, seeing the support vehicle means I'm going to get some comfort or like some sleep or food or something. So
yeah, it's like shimmers in reality, just like shift it into something that doesn't quite make sense because maybe you've lost your true sense out there. It's such a weird phenomenon. I have a lot of sticks that morph into snakes or something, and in rattlesnake areas, it's like, oh, this is scary. It's a snake, and it's just a snake.
Oh no, it's so terrifying.
Yeah, it can be. You've experienced. I can't imagine faces on the ground though, stepping over mocking faces the whole way while you're doing this thing that I'm sure just every FKT is such an immersive thing where you're fighting doubt the whole time. If you have mocking faces looking at you with every step, that sounds nightmarish as well.
Yeah, it's
So
like I've got an audience.
yeah. So obviously after the AT, you were into at least trails and FKTs. So why did you decide to go self-supported and really jump into the more backpacker style of travel?
Yeah. Well, after the AT, it's like even I felt like, I mean, I went so into this maybe a deep, dark place, like so deep into the well to like keep going and get to the end. Like that was something in me I didn't know I had. Like it was this cool discovery. So I mean, I was like, I want more of that. And so I started to explore what else was out there, and I became very interested in the long trail. Also very influenced by Jennifer Pfeiffer Davis and reading her books and stuff. She had talked about the long trail, and there's a lot of uh, cool history. Like a lot of people have set FKTs on the long trail. So I started thinking about that, and I attempted a a supported FKT on the long trail the following summer. And that was also with Warren and with some friends, Adrian and Jen, who I had met on the AT. They live in Pennsylvania, came out and helped me on the AT. And that ended up, I mean, being like a pretty tough. Like I ended up dropping I think not even 2 days in, or maybe it was yeah, something like that. And it it just what am I trying to say? Like it it's something about the dynamic of when things don't go as planned. It was so random. I ended up chafing really horribly the first day. I would never think of chafing as something that would be this detrimental thing, but it was some of the worst pain I had been in. Like it was on my legs and my butt and everything. And so I ended up spending a long time the first day with the support crew, like midday, just trying to like change my clothes and it basically like get some like anti-chafe cream on the parts that were bad. Anyway, the whole day just ended up taking a lot longer than planned, and I finished later than planned. And then it's like if you think of FKTs like a chess game, it's like, well, if I do this, here are all these possibilities. But if I do this, here are all these other possibilities. And it just like there were differing opinions on what to do throughout the group, and ultimately it was up to me. But I think I didn't totally know what I wanted to do, and B, like I want everyone to be like I want everything to be harmonious.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's like there's just suddenly all these factors to consider, and I still don't know what the right decision was. So like it was a bummer. I kept going, but I think that there were just some challenges there that made it really difficult. I stopped, and I and that was that. And the next summer, I still couldn't get the long trail off my mind, but I was like, what if I tried something different? So I wanted to try something self-supported. So I I hiked the entire AT, but that was a supported effort. I didn't camp out on the trail once. I really still didn't have a lot of backpacking experience. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll try self-supported on the long trail, but I need to actually figure out how to backpack.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that just became my next project, and I was coaching cross country for a high school at the time. We had a little gap of spring break, so I used that time to go hike the Pinhoti Trail, and that was I basically like my first like more than one night solo hike by myself. So that was a really great chance to just get some experience, get my gear dialed in, figure out what I'm doing, and also just learn to problem solve on my own, which is something I hadn't done before.
Yeah. One thing on the Pinhoti Trail, you had a really cool strategy your first day. Didn't you start with like a running pack or something? And then you
Yeah.
didn't even have to embrace backpacking until like mile 60 or 70? Or how did you tackle that?
Yes, I fully took advantage of the self-supported
Mhm.
guidelines in which you can book yourself a hotel if you want. So I booked myself a hotel in Dalton, Georgia. I I stashed my actual hiking pack at the hotel, and then my friends Allison and Ben drove me from the hotel to the start of the Pinhoti Trail, which is about 65 trail miles away. And so yeah, I left my full pack there, threw on my hydration vest, and basically just treated the day like 100K run. So and then I don't know what I would have done if something happens and I couldn't. It was kind of a risk because it's like, well, what if something happens and I don't make, or I guess I'd just end up hiking through the night to get to the hotel because I don't have any sleeping stuff with me. So
Yeah.
I did that. And then from the second morning on, it was more of a like traditional through hike.
Yeah, and I think you're a bit of a trailblazer in that respect because I think supported efforts can get a lot lower if there's that hybrid of like willing to camp out in that long stretch with, a bigger pack or something like that. So I just thought that was really cool, and I've put a pin in that for my own sake in the future. If I ever do something supported, is if you have that option to switch between the two styles under the supported banner, it's almost like it leads to so
Yeah,
much more efficiency. So that's super cool.
absolutely. I completely agree. Like, but I didn't have those backpacking skills, and I just mean things like setting up a tent. I'm like, I don't know how to set up a tent. I do now, but it's just
Yeah.
things that seem scary before you do it, at least for me. And when I look back on the AT experience, I kind of limited myself to only ever ending at roads because I didn't not want to end where I couldn't just crawl into the support van at the end of the day. But yeah, but if there are certain sections, yeah, like the White Mountains or the Smoky Mountains, that yeah, if you can just throw on a pack and go, you're giving yourself a lot more flexibility
Yeah.
in a
S
effort. Yeah.
Definitely. And I mean, you've done so many notable trails and FKTs, but I also think it's so cool how it seems like, I don't know if balance is the correct word, but you also are really do these long ultras as well, and then are in school with music, and then you have a background in music. How do you balance and fit in everything in probably an overwhelming schedule and decide even what you want to do? Because FKTs, it's pretty immersive for as long as you're out there.
Yeah, well, thanks. Absolutely. Sometimes I feel like I'm in an FKT, like when I'm in the school year, because you're trying to just maximize every bit of time that you have and be the most efficient with every bit of time you have. I mean, I still think logistically an FKT, that's almost easier in not physically, but just in the sense of like I just have to go forward and like eat and drink and not be a dum dum, but like in the the yeah the everyday, it's just I mean, and this isn't particular to me, but yeah, finding that balance is hard, with school, life, work, like relationship, friends. Yeah, I'm still trying to find that balance. So, I mean, yeah, my weekdays, I guess one way I've been trying to make the most of my time is I usually try to run to school. I carry a little backpack with me, and which is like good practice for backpacking and FKTs. But I have to think through what I need for the day, and sometimes I don't always need my laptop or iPad, but sometimes I need both. So it's like, ooh, like this, I have my little Strava entries, but I'll write like, yeah, heavy carry today.
Yeah.
it's just like school supplies, and now with winter coming, I'm gonna have to pack heavier shoes and my winter coat and things like that. But yeah, the parking and public transportation and all of that, it's either expensive or slow. So running to and from school is that's kind of my training during the school year. And so I'm not really getting much trail time, and I'm not necessarily seeing the most beautiful sights. And then yeah, like during the day, I'm either in class or I have rehearsals. I'm heading to a music rehearsal after this. I have two majors. One is collaborative piano, and one is composition. So I'm working on these compositions too. I have music to get to other musicians. So there's just always like a million things running around in my head. Always things to do.
Yeah, I just remember the last person standing last year at Across the Years, it was like your break from school. So you're like, I'm just going to squeeze in this trip to Arizona to, put in, well, I think it was your PR then too, but it's just amazing that you can switch gears so easily when I'm sure music too, it's always kind of in your head in school as well. And then it's like jump into something where all you have is time to think and run for a few hours. Is that kind of, I don't know, is the running and the commuting and stuff kind of help balance all that out? Because I know it's hard in a city as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Across the Years was so fun. Like I had so much fun. I guess that was the second time I met you, and I feel like we had just so many funny, interesting conversations throughout. It was just like such a funny and random event. I'm planning to go back this year, and I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, I remember sharing with you that it was so nice to just run and not think of anything. Like it was like such a treat to like turn my brain off. And yeah. So yeah, I mean, as far as the run commute, I admittedly almost never feel like running. I feel so burned out. Well, yeah, a lot of the time. Like the last thing I want to do is like change into my running stuff, especially when it's at the end of the day. Then it's like my sweaty running stuff that's like gross from the morning. But then once I actually get out there and work my way home, yeah, it's like the perfect way to decompress at the end of the day. So I'm always glad I did. And then the times where I'll run out of time and have to drive in, then drive back and oh, it's so stressful. Like, just clenching the steering wheel, and then my back starts hurting, and then there's a bunch of traffic, and it's like why did I drive? This is terrible.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how many miles a week on average do you think you get just from commuting?
It just depends, but maybe so it's 5 miles both ways to and from school, but I don't always go both ways. Like sometimes I'll take the bus or yeah. So maybe like 30 miles, something like that. And then I'll try to tack on whatever I can on the weekend.
Yeah, it's such a life hack. It's, somewhat efficient, and then you get 30 miles as your volume kind of penciled in almost every week. That's so cool. What I guess with being so talented in multiple realms and obviously showing you're great in ultras and FKTs and music, what are you going to do in the future? What's the plan? Do you have any FKTs? Are you more in the racing realm, or what's in the future for Liz?
Definitely. I love the long trails. I love multi-day FKTs. And that's something that is so right now, at least with my season in life, I can't train or run as much as I'd like. And it's usually not like very good quality runs. Like I'm just kind of squeezing it in wherever. So like I've entered some ultras in the last year, like some have gone well, some haven't. And I've found myself feeling a little frustrated that like I'm not like where I want to be necessarily. Like I'm just I'm not as fast as I want to be, or it's hard not to compare myself like with my peers. I'm like, oh man, like we used to run together, but now they're like 25 places ahead of me. And like, I'm always happy for my friends and my peers, but sometimes I'm just like, I don't know if this is like something I want to pursue right now in terms of like ultras. So I love FKTs because I don't necessarily have to be in like my fastest, fittest shape. And it's something it's like, okay, I have to kind of focus on what I'm doing in the school year. But then like the way I felt when school let out in the spring, this past spring, it was kind of like the floodgates were open. I was like, oh, I can go out on the trails. And I went and did this an FKT and on the Via Alpina across Switzerland. My friend Tara and I attempted an FKT on the Colorado Trail. She ended up getting the FKT, but it was still just like this wild, fun adventure. And that kind of stuff brings me a lot of joy. So I think I see more long distance trail FKT attempts in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the last thing and the thing I try to impart on everyone is I'd love you to talk about sort of the last person standing style and how it's almost conducive to getting like a PR or making mileage seem less daunting because it's so reserved of a pace. Did you kind of feel that way? And was it pretty nice way to show yourself you could run 100 miles?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So last year at Across the Years, the only other time I had attempted to run 100 miles was the summer of 2021, Kettle Moraine. I quit a little bit after mile 50. And then I was like, oh, well, hundreds are stupid. I don't actually think that, but I was just mad. but yeah, I did want to kind of prove to myself that I can go 100 miles. Like, I think it is a mental block a little bit for me because even in something like a long trail like the AT, you get to you can choose to stop at the end of the day or sleep for a few hours then keep going, but like with 100 you just kind of have to keep going, so which is hard. So yeah, Across the Years, yeah, it was good because it kind of forces you to slow down.
Yeah. Yeah, and you still get a sub 24-hour 100-miler because that's the pace that's set up for.
Right. Yeah, which is like that. Yeah, a sub 2,400 mile. Like that's to me that's a big deal. So
yeah,
yeah. So I really like that format, and what am I trying to say? Yeah, like I did my second last person standing race a few weeks ago, Bubba's backyard ultra in New England. Very different experience. Across the Years is on this very kind of like well-groomed flat 1 mile loop. Bubba's was a 3.5 mile technical trail mud fest, but it was still the same thing. It was like it's just so, yeah, I like that it's very relaxed and chill. You can just kind of shuffle along and just let the miles go by. And
you get to chat with other people doing the same thing at the same pace too. All right. Last question for you. What of all the races and FKTs or even just a run has been the most fun, or like that, oh my gosh, I love this activity, that you can remember or you can think of, and why?
That's how I feel all the time.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, no, but I would say the most the most enjoyable experience. I mean, I had 2 really good experiences this summer, and I mentioned them briefly, but the Swiss Via Alpina, that was really cool. That was a solo trip I booked for myself. I did this self-supported backpacking trip, but it just felt, I was seeing all these new things. It felt very low pressure, and it just felt very adventurous. So yeah, I had a really great time with that. And then Colorado Trail, long story short, my friend Tara and I started a self-supported, like a team FKT together. I couldn't keep pace, and I ended up dropping, but like she kept going, and we had talked through what would happen, like what we'd do if that happened, which was basically like if someone has to stop, they'd go like support the other person, and it would turn into a supported effort. So I mean, I kind of switched roles really quickly, but yeah, I mean, that was really fulfilling and really fun, and I still got to see all these beautiful parts of Colorado that I've never seen before. So yeah, those, I mean, and probably those are the two like most fresh experiences in my mind, but both really good memories from both.
Yeah, and it just really illustrates the nature of at least FKTs in that trail world, and even ultras too, how it's like, well, it didn't go right for me, but I'm jumping in to help my friend get her goal, and it's completely selfless. So that was such a cool story and thing to see. And then this weekend she got attacked by cactuses.
I know. That's how you two got to meet. That was cool. But oh man, that looked so painful. Oh yeah.
Going viral with cactuses everywhere.
I know. I was like, I mean, she got on your boy Scott Jurek Instagram, so like that's a good like. That's like, oh my God, she made it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the little things. It's the measures of success in different ways.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it's such a small world. Like, it's such this like kind of niche community and sport of these FKTs and multi-day things. So yeah, it's like, why? Yeah, I love embodying, like, supporting each other, and I don't know.
All right, that was the episode. And one little bit of news I'll throw in there is I believe we just got a new FKT, a new record on the Oregon Coast Trail. I will not spoil anything. I will let the name come out later, but he may or may not have been on this podcast before. So dig back through those episodes and you might be able to guess who set a new self-supported record on the 400-ish mile Oregon Coast Trail. All right, be back on Monday. All of these are on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for listening. We've had like 5,000 listens in just a month of this podcast. Pretty cool. All right, thanks guys. And always remember, stay elite, my friends.